My family has been in northeast Mississippi since the late 17 or early 1800s. By the time I was born, we were lower middle class people. I went to Mississippi College because it was a good college. It was also the cheapest college in the state. Somewhere around the age of 14 or 15, I was sitting in a classic country drugstore with a family practitioner, and we were having a milkshake. And he was talking about medicine. And it came to me that I wanted to be a physician. And I made that decision at that time and never considered anything further. And I remember going home to talk to my mother about it, and I asked her if she thought that we could go to medical school. And she said to me, "No, I don't think we can, John, but I think that you and I and the Lord can." I had decided, well, if I ever were going to specialize, I'd be a pediatrician. But in the Air Force, I took care of about 50 kids all afternoon, every afternoon in the dependents clinic. And it frightened me. And I said, gee, I don't know if I want to, I don't know if I can do this.
I don't remember the first time I laid eyes on him, but I remember that he was a rather charismatic young man with beautiful blue eyes, and dated a number of the young nursing students and others. But
you weren't the only or the first.
No, but I won. I remember in early days when he was extremely busy, that he used to say, well, it's not the quantity of time that I'm able to give them, it's the quality of the time that we spend. And we always tried to do fun things with them, riding bikes together, having picnics together. When we lived in New Orleans, we would ride up to the river and have Sunday morning breakfast, or we'd go right around Audubon Park.
On your bikes?
On our bikes. We had a good time.
I said, well, Dr. Stewart, what would you like me to study? And he said, well, I think transplantation is going to be the biggest field in the next 20, 25 years in surgery. So that's how I got interested in transplantation. Within several months, did what I think was the second kidney transplant in New York State. I did at least 50 or 60 a year on the average, I guess, between 1966 and 2000. So what's that, 44 years at 50 a year? That's a fair number of kidney transplants.
Probably has no peer in this area in surgery and transplantation. When he was started in the transplant program in New Orleans, I mean, they were looked at as nothing short of grave robbers. I mean, you know, it was just so different and new, and everything. Every time it happened, they learned a whole new volume to add to the book of knowledge.
Dr. McDonald is a giant who basically intimidates by his physical appearance. The smell of his pipe. Everybody in the med center knows, oh my God, God's fixing to come around the corner, so straighten up.
For whatever reason, he just absolutely demands respect, before he even says a word. It always just tickled me to death to watch John walk around that hospital and trailed like a bunch of little bitty ducks. All these doctors and interns and residents and all that stuff that followed him around in those days just everywhere he went.
I have heard employees at the hospital refer to him in a very reverent sense as God, because basically many times they feel like in his presence they shouldn't speak.
And I had residents who would pay me to go kiss him, $1, because they loved him and respected him, but they feared him a little bit. And so to see him with his daughter, I think, was good for them.
I think I have the visage that the Lord gave me. And I never set out to be a scary person. But I really don't have a lot of time for idiots, I mean, they don't belong in medical school.
He was just able to come and put it all together and set a standard of work that no one had ever set. I mean, how in the world could you go and complain to the man about a work hour or needing a half day off or whatever, because he never took time off? You couldn't complain about the call schedule because he was taking as much call as anybody else.
The Health Sciences Center in Shreveport has become the role model for health science centers in this part of the United States. He has turned out to be just a phenomenally able administrator, and everyone, all of the doctors at the medical school are just, could not be happier with Dr. McDonald as chancellor.
I'm given credit for a lot of things happening in the medical school, most of which is not deserved. But the one credit that I do deserve is changing heads of surgery and getting John McDonald to come up here. And from that point on, this institution started becoming nationally known and an academic institution.
There was never any doubt that the center of my life was my profession. One of the enormously beautiful things that my wife did for me was she allowed me to be a professional, and she sort of took care of everything else.
He's kind. He's understanding. And he's been like a daddy to all of us that trained under him.
He always stood by me in the tough times and the good times, and he always gave me sound advice.
During my 27 years in political life as being a public servant, I've known many doctors during that time. Dr. McDonald stand out as a giant among all the doctors I've met during that time.
One of a kind. He is a surgical giant, but he is a gentleman. He's honest. He's fair. He's not pompous. He is not egotistical. He is not anything that people think of when other subspecialists think of the word surgeon.
A person that put himself last and everybody first, and has placed the stepping stones of his life and his career in a direction that was always for the betterment of man and not himself. And to me, if that's the definition of a giant, I think that's pretty accurate.
How many lives has he saved? How many lives has he saved through the people he's trained. You can't count them. Okay? How many lives has he improved? You can't count it. So how do you honor a person like that? How do you?